My favorite games, Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred, is nominated for Online Game of the Year. Get your hands together. Yeah. Thank you, Rod. Of course, that is a game that takes real skill.
It does. Yeah, and I'm not trying to flatter everyone here, but if I know one thing about this audience, is that none of you had to pay someone to play Diablo for you.
It's hard to level up your own characters when you're dismantling democracy.
I feel like we're in good company here, but just in case for the people online, if you get mad at that joke, it's Greg Miller. G-R-E-G.
M-I-L-L-E-R. Fuck Elon Musk and fuck Donald Trump.
And now the United States stands with Russia and North Korea against Ukraine and all of our allies in Europe. It's sick. We are standing with dictators and against our allies. I never thought I would see the day when our president would be a puppet for a dictator. To my Republican colleagues, did you ever imagine that you would be in a party that stands on the sides of dictators or on the sides of a country who kills journalists, with an authoritarian accused of war crimes, a man who assassinates his political opponents? Aren't you embarrassed by what you've become? It's
the gentleman's time has expired.
To watch my colleagues side with Russia because Trump said so. I yield back.
Will the president abolish the Department of Education?
You know, what is going on in this country, not only with education, but with other institutions, is the president is operating in a very authoritarian, illegal, and unconstitutional way. If they want changes in the Department of Education, they want to abolish the Department of Education, fine, come to Congress. That is the process. That is what our Constitution is about. You know, we have three separate branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. We are not and cannot and must not move to all power in one branch.
Senator, does that mean you're worried about oversight or something like Robert here? Like, once he's confirmed, are you concerned that you won't have that?
I am concerned that there is a real look. It is a little bit weird, just a little bit weird, that the President of the United States is now head of the Kennedy Center. You know, my the only person in America think that's a little bit strange. You know, we have other people who know a little bit about culture, maybe even more than the President. But what is clearly happening in this country right now, every single day, with Musk, with President Trump, is more and more power going to fewer and fewer people, and often people who have huge amounts of money.
Can you tell me about your decision to co-sponsor Kane's Gaza bill?
I'm just a middle school teacher. Can I get a picture?
That they are born of magic and fire, and so are all of we. You don't fucking do that shit here. Fuck that.
It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Y'all, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total default, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear.
people like the grifter-in-chief Trump and President Musk are openly using their public offices to enrich themselves to the tune of billions of dollars. So if we want to look at waste, fraud, and abuse, which I'm down to do, why is there complete silence on the other side of the aisle about looking at the complete grifter that is the President of the United States and the richest man on the earth, which is looking into things like Social Security and different things like that? Why don't we investigate the real corruption?
Hold off. Point of order.
I reclaim my time.
Point of order.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Hold off. There was a point of order when you said something. Who asked for it? Mr. Higgins, would you like to revise your remark with respect to improperly identifying the President of the United States?
I'll say President Musk and grifter-in-chief Trump.
All right.
Grifter-in-chief
Hey, Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Wait a second.
If I wanted to challenge someone to a fight, they would know it. Thank you.
Chairman, if Mr. Musk actually came here, then maybe the rules committee
I heard no
would have
disparagement of the
I'll say something else.
We'll save a lot of time.
I'll say something else.
Okay. All right. We're going to let Chair recognize Mr. Frost. You still have 3:49. You're going to maybe revise the disparaging comment about the president because that's supposed to be our decorum here. And
it is supposed to be. President Musk and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who is engaged in grifting of the American people, often use their public offices to enrich themselves. Someone on the other side was just asking, how would you feel if you called someone else from the
Hold off, Mr. Frost. Hold off. There's a pending motion for disparaging the president.
I will say the president's grifting because you spent the last 2 years saying President Biden
Take down
was
his words.
So I can say that Trump is grifting. What I will withdraw is calling him grifter-in-chief. That is what I will
The chair
withdraw.
sustains the point of order, and the words in question are ordered stricken from the transcript of this proceeding. So the member is barred from further participation.
Ms. Crockett, insulting people's appearance as well as trying to fight them isn't a problem.
Point of order. It's a yes or no.
But we're so sad.
No.
Yes or no.
Order.
That our
Yes or no.
leader.
Just skip her.
So
Skip her.
sad.
Skip her. You're
My
skip
vote.
her. Go to the next one. Go to the next
The
one.
MSNBC anchor.
Go to the next one. Don't count that. Go to the next one.
Ms. Randall votes no. Mr. Subramaniam. Mr. Subramaniam votes no.
I want to say it's despicable that this committee is going to silence me for bringing
The
up
gentleman's
Trump's
words have been taken down. He is not
corruption.
permitted to speak for the rest of the hearing.
Making millions of dollars.
Mr. Ranking Member, I'm going to have the Sergeant at Arms remove him if he doesn't refrain.
The only way that they win is we retreat, and we're not going to retreat. We're not going to surrender. We're not going to quit. Fight, fight, fight. Amen.
Lastly, we have another executive order that President Trump signed relating to independent agencies. This executive order would establish important oversight functions in the Office of Management and Budget and its subsidiary office, OIRA, supervising independent agencies and many of their actions, and also reestablishes the longstanding norm that only the President or the Attorney General can speak for the United States when stating an opinion as to what the law is.
Thank you very much, Will. That was the primary purpose of this conference. I mean, you know, who can blame them if they made these great deals with the United States, took advantage of the United States on manufacturing, on just about everything, every aspect that you could imagine they took advantage of. I look at some of these agreements, I'd read them at night, and I'd say, who would ever sign a thing like this? So the tariffs will go forward, yes, and we're going to make up a lot of territory. All we want is reciprocal. We want reciprocity. We want to have the same. So if somebody charges us, we charge them. It's very simple, but it'll be very good for our country. Our country will be extremely liquid and rich again. Plus,
are we still America's allies now that America is openly using Kremlin propaganda?
Trump is clearly one of the worst negotiators in geopolitical history. The first time ever an American president has criticized an ally for not surrendering to an invading army. You fucking pussyhole. Trump claiming that Ukraine started the war is like Roosevelt saying, well, what the fuck were those ships doing in Pearl Harbor in the first place? The art of the deal, eh? The great negotiator showed his hand after 2 seconds, showed the world that he'd been entirely captured by Kremlin talking points. Instead of at least pretending to be neutral so that he could get his Nobel Peace Prize, he immediately showed that he was openly hostile to one of the parties, and not the invader, the invaded. The art of the deal. The guy negotiating with Russia is a Fox News host. Although, what's the point of a functioning Defense Department if you're going to surrender to your enemy after just 1 month in office? Imagine being the President of the United States with the richest man in the world as your pet and still shitting the bed every time someone points out that you're being a wanker. And you can tell that Trump doesn't actually think Zelensky is a dictator because his nose isn't nestled up Zelensky's anus whilst giving him a reach around like he does with real actual dictators. The UK didn't have a general election for 10 years because of World War II. That doesn't make Winston Churchill a dictator. Zelensky has not banned opposition parties, just the ones openly pro-Russian. Just like we banned the fascist party when Hitler was bombing the shit out of us on a nightly basis. Zelensky has not banned independent media, just pro-Russian propaganda. And NATO expansionism is not the reason we have this war. NATO expansion on Russia's borders stopped in 2004. So what? Russia was so annoyed that they waited 10 years to invade Crimea and then a quick 8-year breather and then on to Ukraine. Utter bollocks.
So at a high level, if you say what is the goal of Doge and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, okay, we would have to, if you sorry. So, tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And then we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking because we spend a lot of money on defense, and if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country. And it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about 30 million,
right.
etc.
Well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, what happened at USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But just there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, we're looking at, say, if you look at, say Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation, can take up to a year to get on the list, and even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here, we're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that really everything is geared towards complaint minimization, so then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain, obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints. But now we're saying that, no, actually, we are going to complain. If money is spent badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay. Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people. I mean, these things, like, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical, I think. It's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved. If it's not, we should think about it. So, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone who's 150? I don't. Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. So, that's a case where, like, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two. And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, like, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately. I'll tell you another crazy thing. So, one of the things is, like, we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this. Obviously, there need to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, well, okay, let's, if people can retire, with full benefits and everything, that would be good. They can retire, get their retirement payments, everything. And then we were told, this is actually, I think, a great anecdote, because we were told the most number of people that could retire possibly in a month is 10,000. We're like, well, why is that? Well, because all the retirement paperwork is manual on paper. It's manually calculated, then written down on a piece of paper. Then it goes down a mine. And I'm like, what do you mean a mine? Like, yeah, there's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine. We'll post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, then the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine shaft elevator can move determines how many people can retire from the federal government. And the elevator breaks down sometimes, and then nobody can retire. Doesn't that sound crazy? There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we can take those people and say, like, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft and carrying manila envelopes to, boxes in a mine shaft, you could do practically anything else, and you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way. So anyway, so I think that's an example. At a high level, if you say, like, how do we increase prosperity, is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles. And so increase the total output of goods and services, which means that there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal.